In this video, you're going to get introduced to more concepts in GitHub, and that includes cloning, forking, and pull requests. So let's go through an example which covers these concepts in detail. So in the previous video, we made changes to our local repository, and then we pushed those changes to GitHub. So by now, you must be familiar with committing changes, creating snapshots in your local repository, and pushing any content to an online GitHub repository. You can also make changes directly inside GitHub and make commits as well. Now, let's suppose that a collaborator which does not have access to our GitHub account would like to make a contribution to our project. So for example, they want to optimize our code or add a new feature or fix a bug, and they would like to push those changes to our own GitHub account. Well, they don't have access to our GitHub account, so we need to find a solution. So what they can do, they can fork our own repository into their own GitHub account. So what does it mean exactly? Well, forking means that you create a copy of a GitHub repository in your own GitHub account. So basically, you are creating a new repository in your own account, which is an exact copy of another repository in GitHub. So let's go ahead and implement this step. So on the left-hand side, you can see my own repository project, which is inside this account of Ucode, and you can see all the files inside that repository. Now on the right-hand side, I opened a private tab, and this GitHub account belongs to somebody else, which we're going to call Gentle Collaborator. So this is the collaborator who is looking to add changes to our own project. So at the moment, this collaborator doesn't have any repositories in their account. So they would like to fork our own repository. So to do that, first of all, they need to find our repository. So they can either use our repository link and access our repository. Otherwise, they can look for the repository, projects, or the user of Ucode. So let's look for the user of Ucode, which is going to be easier. So we're looking inside GitHub. And now if you click on users, that's our user. So if I click on it, I can see all the repositories of that specific user. So this is the repository that I'm interested in. So now you can see all the files inside that repository. Now we want to fork this repository into this new GitHub account. So remember that we are currently inside Gentle Collaborator's GitHub account. And over there, that's our old GitHub account of Ucode. So to fork this repository into this new GitHub account, we need to click on the fork button. Now, before doing that, you may be looking at this green button right now, which says clone or download. Well, basically, if you click there, you're just going to be downloading a copy of this repository to your own computer or your own local environment. So cloning is the same as downloading, and that's something we're going to do in a bit as well. So for now, let's fork this repository to this new GitHub account. And now you can see that after the forking finished, we are now inside the repository project, which is inside the Gentle Collaborator account. And if you look in the old repository project, that was inside the off Ucode account. All right, so now we have just added this new repository to the new GitHub account. And now we can make changes inside this repository without affecting the original repository which is inside of ucode, because this one is inside another account. Now, instead of making changes directly inside GitHub, we would prefer to make a copy of that repository into our own local repository in order for us to use our favorites editor, for example. So what we're going to do now is called cloning. So again, cloning is making a copy of that GitHub repository into your own local environments. So once we do that, we are going to make some changes locally to this repository and then commit those changes. So to clone the repository, I'm going to click on the clone button, and then I'm going to use this link. So I'm going to do this inside my desktop. So let's go to the desktop. Now, if I look inside my desktop, I've got a folder called projects already. Now, this will create a conflict if I try to clone the repository right here, because this will create a folder which is called project as well. So I need to rename that new folder something else. So the command to use to clone is git clone followed by this link. And I'm going to choose a new name for the folder, and I'm going to call it cloned rep for cloned repository. So now if I check my desktop, I'm going to find a new folder there. And if I open it, I can see the content of the repository. Now, obviously, you don't see files like the gitignore file because they are hidden files. Now you can open this project inside brackets and make changes. So for example, I'm going to add one line to file 5, and also I'm going to add one line to file 6. Now I'm happy with these changes, so I'm going to commit them and push them to GitHub. So first I'm going to go inside the folder, and then I'm going to use git add. Or before doing that, let's check the output of git log. And here you can see that we've got the whole history of this repository, including any merges, commits, and so on. Everything is there. All right. So when you clone a repository, you actually clone the full content of the repository, including the Git files, which include the Git log and so on. So let's stage our files and let's commit. All right, now that we committed our changes, let's push the changes to GitHub. So to do this, first of all, as we've done before, we're gonna need to create a remote using git remote add. So we're gonna call the remote something else than origin. So I'm going to call it origin 2 or origin clone. And the link we need to use is the same as that one. Now to push the repository to GitHub, we're going to use git push and then -u to remember the branch, and then the name of our origin. So we call this origin clone, and then the branch that we are pushing to, and that's going to be the master branch. So again, -u is to remember this branch, so that next time if you want to push to the same remote, you can use git push the name of the remote, and it will do that to the master branch for you because it's remembered it. So let's try this. So our push has been rejected, And that's because I'm already logged into a different GitHub account, which is off Ucode, and I'm trying to push to this new GitHub account. So this is something we're going to fix in the next video.